Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is Friday. I hope you all are doing well. The weekend is upon us and Everton are back. It is the game preview. Tottenham Hotspur versus Everton tomorrow evening, 5:30 kickoff on a Saturday evening, which is absolutely what we all want, especially if you are travelling down to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium tomorrow evening. I will be myself. I don't know what time the coach leaves. I can only assume it's a ridiculous hour in the morning, and that means that you all can only assume that I will be drinking rosé wine at a ridiculous hour in the morning, and that assumption would be a correct one. It would be an accurate one. Obviously, a game Everton will be looking to bounce back in after the defeat to Manchester United last week at Goodison Park. Quite a disappointing defeat, especially given the form that Everton have been in and the sort of feel-good factor around the football club at the moment. Now, okay, Manchester United are a team with a lot of quality and who themselves have been in relatively good form. Obviously, again, disregarding that defeat to Manchester City, which is an anomaly. Having said that, I watched Manchester United last night against Ammonia in the Europa League tie. It was the reverse fixture of the one prior to our game, in which we spoke about in the game preview to last week's game, about how they were certainly susceptible to making mistakes and conceding goals and giving chances away. And I watched them again last night, and even after Sunday's win, they were not very good whatsoever. Now, okay, they ended up winning the game and they probably had about 95% possession. Ammonia were very, very defensive, but, they had something like 30 odd attempts on goal and only managed to get one in the last sort of couple of minutes of the game, and they weren't particularly good whatsoever. They really, really weren't, and it's sort of just, again, obviously we done the live stream yesterday about being patient with this Everton side and how, we're all going to have to be patient this season with Frank Lampard and with these players, because, we will have games like last week where we're beaten and where we don't perform and where we come up against a better team. But watching them yesterday just made me think, if only we hadn't have made those two individual mistakes, I do firmly believe we'd have gone on and won that game, even though we weren't particularly great. But anyway, last week is out the way. When we done the review, we said that we've got to put it to one side now, forget about it and move on, and that's exactly what we've got to do, and that's exactly what we've done. And we've got the small task of playing a Tottenham team who are currently third in the league and have only lost one game this season, to try and build some momentum and build some confidence back on and try and bounce back in. As I said, Tottenham currently having a really, really good start to the Premier League season. They sit third, obviously behind Arsenal, who are in first, and Manchester City in second, 20 points, which is 4 points more than Chelsea, who are sitting in fourth. 9 games played like everybody, 6 wins, 2 draws and only 1 defeat. That defeat obviously coming against Arsenal in the North London derby a couple of weeks ago. 20 goals they've scored this season with only 10 against, which is not as good of a goal difference as Manchester City, who have got a ridiculous goal difference because they've got a literal robot up front. But Tottenham have still had an incredible start to the Premier League season. Obviously, their first full season under new manager Antonio Conte, who is a wonderful, wonderful manager, one of the best in world football, and has been one of the best in world football for some time now. Took over, a Chelsea side a few years ago. We were in a really, really bad situation and ended up winning the league with them and winning the league comfortably. And I feel like Antonio Conte's move to Tottenham is probably the best transfer that Tottenham have made in recent years, and that's saying something, considering they've bought a number of top quality players into their team. He is the difference between a Tottenham team being good but never great to potentially being great. Now, obviously, I'm aware that they still haven't won anything and it's still a very long season, and whether or not they'll be able to keep up this form and ultimately do what no other Tottenham manager has managed to do since 2008 and win a trophy is a different question. But if they're going to win a trophy, it will be with this set of players, because this is the best set of players they've had in a long, long time, and it will be under this manager because he is the best manager they've had in a very long time. It was, I don't want to liken it to Everton under Carlo Ancelotti, because I think it's very different circumstances, and I think Tottenham have got a much better team than what Everton had, but almost the impact that the manager has is similar to what we all felt when Carlo Ancelotti come into Everton Football Club. We know the quality that Tottenham Hotspur have got. the likes of Harry Kane, who has been consistently the best striker in the Premier League for the last 6-7 years or so. Whether or not that will remain the same this season, I'm sure a certain Norwegian lad who plays in Manchester will have an argument against that one, but he still will be one of the top strikers in the league. I think I seen a stat the other day that he scored something like 7 goals in 8 games, or 8 goals in 9 games, or something like that, which is ridiculous, by the way. Absolutely ridiculous stat for the Premier League, but obviously that's being completely overshadowed at the moment by Erling Haaland, who's got 15 goals in 9 games or whatever it is. But the attention that is on Erling Haaland and the goals he's scoring and the records he's breaking or may not break is maybe, there's an argument to be had that's maybe sort of taking the pressure and taking the limelight off somebody like Harry Kane, who is just ticking along game in, game out, scoring goals, not really getting much attention paid to him, but he's still scoring, effectively 1-in-1, which would, if he carried on in that way, would lead him to 38 goals this season. So, again, gone a little bit under the radar this season, but had a really good start to the season. Son, who hasn't had too great of a start to the season, but we saw a few weeks ago he is capable of coming off the bench and scoring a hat-trick, whenever he wants to, really. And, in that game, the goals that he scored they weren't tap-ins, they weren't comfortable finishes. It wasn't like he come off the bench and had 3 sort of one-on-one set up for him. 2 of them were absolute world-class strikes that only the very, very best scored, and he is one of them. They've got a Brazilian lad who they brought in the summer as well. I'm not sure who they brought him from, but he seems to have settled well, working hard, getting the plaudits that he wasn't getting previously, which is strange considering he is the exact same player as he was previously. But as I said, I don't know an awful lot about him. I just know the fact that he's certainly becoming a fan favourite over there. That's all we're going to talk about really before I start crying. So no, obviously, look, Richarlison has seemed to have settled in really well. Obviously, joined the team with incredible firepower up front in Son and Kane and Kuleveski. Although he mightn't have scored as many goals as he would have liked, he certainly had the game time, he certainly worked hard, and whenever I hear a Tottenham fan talk about him, they're talking positively about him. So we know the challenges that this Tottenham team can cause to Everton, and we know, obviously the difficulty that they caused to Everton last season. It was one of the hardest match days as a Blue, travelling all the way up there. I think it was a 17-hour round trip or something like that to have been beaten in the way that we were. It was extremely difficult, especially given the position that we were in at the time. Obviously, tomorrow is very, very different. We're facing a different Tottenham team for a start, but we're also a very different Everton team. An Everton team with much more consistency, much more fight, much more desire, much more commitment, and a group of players who are just much more organised. The midfield, which is 10 times better, even though it wasn't great against Manchester United, 10 times better than it was when we last travelled down to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We've got a back line, 2 centre-halves who are much more consistent and much better than what the centre-halves were that played in the last game against Spurs. So, yeah, as I said, it is very easy to look back on that fixture, and whenever we play a game, one of the first things I do, when looking at the preview and when talking about the game is think about, the exact same fixture the season prior. And I think it's fair to say I don't think any of us really want to think about this fixture last season because it was an incredibly difficult day, as I mentioned. But as I said, it was a very different Everton outfit, and it was a very different Everton side, and in a very different set of circumstances. Now, that's not to say that this will not be an incredibly difficult game tomorrow, because Spurs have gotten an awful lot better since that game as well. Spurs were very, very good on that evening, don't get me wrong, but they've gotten even better. They've gotten more solid. Defensively, they look a lot better. Eric Dyer's in really, really good form. As I said, their midfield is much stronger than it was on that day, and their attack is only being strengthened by, obviously, Richarlison going in there. So this will be tough. It will be very, very, very tough. It would be silly and remiss of me to sit here and talk about an away game against a team that have only lost once this season and are sitting comfortably within the top 4 and say it won't be tough. You look at their recent fixtures. They had a 3-2 win in the Champions League on Wednesday against Eintracht Frankfurt. They beat Brighton away last weekend, which was, again, on paper, you might look at it and might think, oh, that's an expected result, but that's a very, very, very good result. Brighton are a good team and specifically have got a good home record in recent years, and to go away to Brighton and to win is is no easy task, especially given they're in a bit of a new sort of manager bounce at the moment because obviously of their new manager coming in. Obviously they had that defeat to Arsenal in the Premier League the week prior to that. In between that, they had a 0-0 draw with Eintracht Frankfurt in that other fixture in the Champions League. As I said, they had that defeat to Arsenal in the North London derby. But before that, I mean, you look at their fixtures: 6-2 win against Leicester, which was an absolute wipe the floor with them. They did lose 2-0 to Sporting in the Champions League, which is proof that they can be beaten. They beat Marseille week prior to that. They beat Fulham the week prior to that. Drew with West Ham, beat Forest, beat Wolves, drew with Chelsea 2-2 in that game, and obviously beat Southampton 4-1 on the opening day of the season. So they've had a really, really, really solid start to the Premier League season, Tottenham, and they look a really, really strong outfit. I don't think there will be many, many fans, football fans, that would even entertain the idea of this Tottenham team not finishing inside the top four, which shows the improvement, because ultimately last season it was always about whether it would be Tottenham or Arsenal, and obviously it ended up being Tottenham in the end. But they were by no means a guaranteed sort of shout for those Champions League places, where I think you look at the league table and the way in which teams are performing and the way in which teams have started the season. And as I said, it's almost like Tottenham and Manchester City and probably Arsenal as well are the guaranteed the guaranteed teams that will be within the top four come the end of the season. So, that's credit to obviously Antonio Conte and these players. But as I said, again, very different Everton team to the one that went down there towards the end of last season. Much more resilience, much more confidence, much more personality in there. And even after the defeat to Manchester United, if anybody saw the video of Dwight McNeil, Amadou Onana and Neil Maupay sitting down during that fan event and talking about their time at the football club so far and how they've settled in, that was obviously the other night, but when that event took place after the defeat to Manchester United. And yet still, you can see there's an overall positive feeling around the players. There's an overall positive feeling around the manager, the football club at the moment. I think the fans, okay, we were upset and we were disappointed with that defeat to Manchester United, but overall, it was almost like put it behind us and move forward. And this will be tough. This will be incredibly tough for Everton tomorrow. One thing we absolutely have to do is remain defensively strong and defensively solid. And I think that's actually one thing we did last week, to be fair. Two players that I didn't have any criticism for last weekend were Connor Cody and Dwight Tarkowski. I was going to say then Connor Cody and James Tarkowski, because even though we lost the game and we were very nervy and it was a poor performance, I don't think either of them could have done any better than what they did. I thought James Tarkowski was absolutely brilliant, and I thought Connor Cody's performance was solid as well. The goals come from mistakes by other players and not necessarily them. So they're going to have to be on absolute top form. Now, obviously, there's question marks as to how Frank Lampard will set up in this game, and I think that is a really sort of interesting thought and point to sort of talk about, because obviously we know Anthony Gordon is suspended for this game after picking up his 5th yellow card of the season last weekend against Manchester United. So the assumption would be there will be just a direct replacement. Anthony Gordon will come out. You will have Dwight McNeil slot back in, and to be fair, there's even an argument that Dwight McNeil should have never been brought out in the first place, really, considering he scored the winner against Southampton. And, Anthony Gordon, okay, has had a good start to the season, but hasn't particularly blown anybody's skirts up. But it really, really will be interesting to see how Frank Lampard approaches this game, because the defeat at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last season was a battering, a real sort of lesson in football. And pardon me, I've just slurped that, and I didn't even mean to slurp it. I didn't know it was that full. It was a real lesson in Antonio Conte and to Frank Lampard, and ultimately that is something we cannot afford again tomorrow. Losing a game is what it is. That will happen in football. As I said about last week, you will have games where you don't perform particularly well, and you make mistakes and you lose, and you've just got to put them behind you and move on. The defeat to Tottenham away from home last season was completely unacceptable, and don't get me wrong, I think a large part of that was because the players' attitudes were not right, the commitment, the desire wasn't there, the effort wasn't there, and I don't think that will be the case tomorrow, because all of that seems to have been completely, sort of nailed out of this Everton team, and it's almost like this Everton team don't know. I don't want to say they don't know how to perform like they did last season at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, because we are only early on in the season, but, It seems almost remiss to even think that they could perform like that, because it was really, really bad. However, this Tottenham team can still perform in the way that they did and be clinical and be quick and can be decisive and can, run rings around teams, as they've already shown this season. So it will be interesting to see how Frank Lampard sets up. Will he go with the usual formation of 4-3-3 and continue with the three in midfield? Will Garner continue to be in there, given how poor he was last weekend? Will James Garner get a go? Will Frank go with a 5 at the back because of the attacking threat that Tottenham Hotspur plays? Now, if I'm not mistaken, we played a 5 at the back last season there, and it was an absolute shit show. Granted, the defenders in that 5 at the back weren't as good as what they are now, certainly the centre-halves. But it was a shit show. However, given the strength that Tottenham Hotspur have got and the quality they've got, it wouldn't surprise me if Frank, went for that 5 at the back, maybe put Michael Keane in there next to Tarkowski and Cody to add a little bit more solidity. We know, obviously, from Frank's press conference yesterday that Ben Godfrey is still nowhere near match fitness. He's getting better and he's back on the grass, which is great to see, but he's nowhere near match fitness. And Frank did also say that Yerry Mina had suffered a setback with his recovery from injury, so he won't be available, and Mason Holgate, although is getting better, Frank said that he won't be ready for this week, so it would only be Michael Keane who'd be fitting in there, who, in a back 5 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last season, was an absolute disaster. So it's interesting to see what the manager will do. Personally, for me, I would continue with a 4 at the back for that reason. If you had Yerry Mina available, if you had Mason Holgate available, if you had Ben Godfrey available, then it becomes a completely different conversation. It becomes a completely different debate, because then you're talking about adding more defensive solidity and players going into that defence that are capable of doing that role. If I've said it once and I will say it again, I don't sit here and out players for no reason. I don't sit here and have a go at players for no reason. There is absolutely no need for me to sit here and have a go at Michael Keane. He hasn't kicked the ball in the Premier League this season, and I don't even think he had a part to play in our cup game. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but he's barely kicked the ball this season for Everton, if at all. So there's no need for me to sit here and have a go at him, or to scapegoat him, or to have a go. The fact of the matter is, he cannot play in a back 5. And I know you could say, well, now he's got Cody and Tarkowski next to him, who are leaders, who might be a bit better for him, and he might be a bit better next to them because they're experienced and they've got that leadership. Maybe in a back 4 next to one of them, he'd perform better, but he can't play in a back 5. He could have Thiago Silva and Paolo Maldini next to him. He cannot play in a back 5. He just doesn't know how to do it. He's not quick enough to do it. And what the mistake Frank Lampard made away to Tottenham last season was he played too high of a line. Defensively, we were in absolute shambles, and Michael Keane ended up having to go off because he was that bad. I know he got hurt, but he was awful. He was absolutely awful. So, for me, I wouldn't be going with a back 5. I'd be sticking with a back 4. I'd be sticking with a 3 in midfield, and I'd be sticking with a 3 up top. And I would, I'd be very surprised if this game isn't similar to last week, in the sense of that Everton don't see a lot of the ball, and it's quite a defensive performance. Now, there's definitely an argument that last week that shouldn't have been the case, because, again, I don't know whether people will disagree or people will agree with me, but for me, we showed Manchester United far too much respect last week. We showed them far too much respect. We allowed them far too much time on the ball, and we treated them like they were the Manchester United of the mid to late 2000s, winning the league every year, absolutely unbelievable, unbeatable. And they're not that team. They're not that team anymore, and we treated them like they were that team. This Tottenham game is very different. We're away from home. Tottenham are a very, very, very good side, and trying to go toe-to-toe with Tottenham, I don't think will have the same benefits as what trying to go toe-to-toe with Manchester United would have done. If we'd have gone toe-to-toe with Manchester United last week, the crowd would have been up for it. It was at Goodison, it was under the lights, very different circumstances, very different atmosphere. Plus, Manchester United have been known on multiple occasions to absolutely cack their pants, for lack of a better phrase, when put under pressure and when teams are getting at them and teams are actually forcing them into working hard and having to think about what passes they've got to make and what crosses they've got to play, etc., etc. This Tottenham team is very, very different. We could go toe-to-toe with this Tottenham team, and within 3 passes, they're 1-0 up. Within 4 passes, they're 2-0 up. Within another 3 passes, they're 3-0 up. They're much more composed. They're a much better team than Manchester United. They've got much more quality in there, in my opinion. And that's what I'm saying. Don't be surprised if the tactic tomorrow by Frank Lampard is sort of a sit back, defend, and hit on the counter-attack, which is almost then putting all of the reliance on the wingers and the wide players, which of course we know will be Demarai Gray and Dwight McNeil tomorrow. No Anthony Gordon in there. I don't see anybody else going over there. I don't think I'd put Alex Iwobi back in there on the wing. You might say, well, put Iwobi on there and put Garner in the centre midfield. No, if Iwobi starts, he starts in centre of midfield for me. It's as simple as that, and he should start because even last week he wasn't at his very, very best, but he was still very, very good and scored an absolute worldie. So he does start, and he starts in centre of midfield for me. So it will be interesting to see how the manager approaches this game. I would be willing to bet, and I'm not a betting man, but I would be willing to bet there will be a lot of pressure and a lot of involvement for Conor Cody and James Tarkowski tomorrow. I think Conor Cody and James Tarkowski, now more than ever, and don't get me wrong, they've been absolutely fabulous so far this season. The pair of them have been excellent, but I think this is the game where we will see them put under probably the most pressure and have to do more defending than they've done in any game so far this season. And we'll be up against the best players they've played so far this season in an Everton shirt. So, again, it will be tough. It will be a difficult afternoon. I dare say it'll be a long afternoon for everybody inside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, including myself. But I'm quite positive about this game. I'm not positive sitting here saying I think we'll go out and win. Very, very different to last week. I sat here and done the preview this time last week, and I believed we would beat Manchester United for many, many reasons. But the main reason being I didn't think they were particularly great, and we've been in good form, and I thought we could get at them. I'm not quite sitting here now thinking I believe we'll go and beat Tottenham tomorrow, but I believe we can get something out of this game. I really, really do. I believe that if we battle, if we work hard, if we defend, and as I said, both centre-halves defend the way we know they can, and the full-backs, put in good performances as well, then I don't see any reason why we can't get something out of this game. Whether that's a win will be a very, very difficult task. But we know we're capable of scoring goals on the counter-attack. We scored against Leeds on the counter-attack. We scored against Brentford on the counter-attack. We scored against Nottingham Forest on the counter-attack. We can score goals on the counter-attack, and that, I think, will be the tactic tomorrow, is try and hit them on the counter-attack when they're least expecting it and get in behind them that way. Use the pace of Demarai Gray, use the quality and the left foot of Dwight McNeil, and use Neil Mowbray to sort of, put himself about and frustrate their back line. But as I said, I do think there will be a heavy reliance on both centre-backs having a good day at the office. And, ultimately that's to be expected when you're coming up against a team with Harry Kane and Heung-min Son and Richarlison and Kulusevski and Perisic in there, who they brought in the summer, and Yves Bissouma, who's a good player. I don't know if Yves Bissouma's injured, actually. So, yeah, again, it will be very, very difficult. Frank was asked directly about Richarlison in his press conference yesterday, and I thought the answer was very, very interesting. He basically said he'll shake his hand and wish him the best of luck. And I think Frank shares the feelings of the majority of Evertonians as well, in the sense that we are appreciative to Richarlison for what he did for the years he was at Everton in terms of his work rate and his desire. He's not an Everton player anymore, so we have to forget him and move on. He's the enemy tomorrow, effectively. And Frank also mentioned knowing his style, but understanding that his style is very unpredictable. So even when you know his style, it's still hard to be able to defend against. It's still hard to be able to plan for because he's unpredictable. And that is very much the case. Very, very, very much the case. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say if Richarlison starts this game, I'll give him 5 minutes before he's wound up the Evertonians, and that might work in Everton's favour. Because what might happen is he might throw himself on the floor, or he might go in for the tackle, or he might roll around a bit, because that's how he plays, and he's not going to change the way he plays because he's playing against Everton. He's not going to change his personality. He's not going to change who he is as a footballer and a man because he's playing against Everton. But what that might do is that might frustrate the Evertonians in within the stadium, might frustrate the players, and then that might give everybody a rise then. Certainly, if this game was at Goodison, I think it would have more of an effect, because you'd have 40,000 Evertonians on the back then, and getting behind the players and getting at the Tottenham players, which is very different. But we know better than anybody how good Richarlison is, how dangerous Richarlison is, how clinical he can be in front of goal, and how in that team of genuine top quality forwards he slots in. But it isn't just Richarlison we have to worry about, is it? It's not like he's gone to a team that we're looking and going, right, he's the main focus. You've got Harry Kane there, who, as I said, has been, is arguably, and I'm not saying he is, but is arguably the best forward to ever play in the Premier League. And when he retires, may well be, it might be unarguable that he's the best forward to ever play in the Premier League. You've got Son there, who's oozes, or as much as I don't like him, oozes quality. You've got Kulevesky there, who's a really good player as well. So, it will be difficult. It will be difficult, but there's no reason as to why we shouldn't be going in this game with confidence. And that's not a confidence because, we're sitting here saying Everton will win this game. It's a confidence because we're sitting here, understanding that we've been in good form, understanding that last week was a blip, and that, we're a very, very solid team, and we're a team that ultimately don't concede many goals, touch wood, given the result last season there, and a team that are hard working, will battle, will fight, will show that commitment, will show that desire, and will, maybe we'll give Tottenham their most difficult test this season, obviously barring the Arsenal game where they were beaten by a much better team. So yeah, it will be tough, but I'm looking forward to it. Am I looking forward to making the journey down to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? Yes, because I cannot wait to have a bottle of rosé wine in my hand. I'm not that I'm condoning drinking, and if you do drink responsibly, all that sort of stuff. But get me to the game. Get me on that coach. Get me to the game. Ned's in the comments. He says, yes, Cam, what's happening? My mate Luke says, let's go. Cam is right. David says, hi. Wonderlust says, let's do it. There's this weirdo over there who likes to dance like a pigeon. Sounds scary. We better keep him busy for sure. Ned says that journey home from Spurs last season was grim. Yeah, I think it was 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:15 in the morning, something like that. We arrived back in Kirkby after leaving at 12 o'clock in the afternoon the day prior. And obviously, as I said, we lost the game 5-0. We were 2-0 down in 15 minutes. It was a very, very, very difficult day. Vinagre might get a game, says David. Yeah, I'm not too sure on that one. Eugene says Paul Clement was on Sky. Interesting. And he also says about Frank Lampard. Spurs win, says Shane. Listen, I don't know if you're a blue, Shane, but probably not. Will says, I think James Garner needs to start for his creativity. There's definitely a shout there for that. There's definitely as I said, an argument. Whether or not that will happen, we will wait and see, but there's definitely an argument there to be had. And Matty says, I think Son and Kane will start tomorrow and Richarlison will come off the bench. They play at 2, don't they? That's been their best this season, having quality come off the bench. Well, and again, whether it's Richarlison who comes off the bench, or Son, or Kulevesky, or whoever, as I said, Connor Cody and James Tarkowski are going to have to be. And the fullbacks as well. The fullbacks are going to have to be in top form, because it's no good Tarkowski and Cody being in great form if Mikalenko and Coleman are going to have shockers, because that's what we saw last week. Mikalenko and Coleman were both absolutely piss poor last week, and even though the two centre-halves played well, it didn't make any difference at the end of the day. So the full-backs have got to put in good performances as well. That'll be really, really important. Anyway, let's get into our predicted starting 11 ahead of this one then. As we mentioned, Frank Lampard confirmed in his press conference that Yerry Mina, Ben Godfrey and Mason Holgate will all remain out. Anthony Gordon, we know, is out through a suspension. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Frank effectively said we will have to manage. He didn't quite say he wasn't going to start this game, but he said something along the lines of we still need to be careful with him, we still need to manage him. And, it was good for him to get minutes last week. So with all that in mind, predicted starting 11, let's go. In goal, Jordan Pickford. Again, I think there is a strong argument to be had that Jordan could have done better for both goals last week. We won't talk about the disallowed one because ultimately it was disallowed and it doesn't matter. But there's definitely an argument that Jordan could have done better for both goals last week. Now, having said that, he's still the number one. He still wasn't massively at fault, even though he didn't have as great as the games. And he's still been absolutely excellent this season. And this will be a game where I fully expect Tottenham Hotspur to have many chances on goal, many shots at goal, many opportunities. And yeah, it will be difficult. It will be difficult. So Jordan is in goal without a shadow of a doubt. I am going for a back four on the basis that 3 of our centre-halves that I would have potentially put in a back 5 are out injured, and the only one that's fit that isn't one of Tarkowski or Cody is Michael Keane, who I never ever want to see playing a back 5 ever again, especially after Spurs away last season. So back 4, I'm going with unchanged. Mykolenko at left back, Coleman at right back, Tarkowski and Cody in the middle. Now, there is a shout for somebody else to come in at right back, because Seamus was poor last week, and obviously, the pace of Son or Kulusevski or Richarlison or whoever it may be could cause problems to Coleman. But the reality is, with Godfrey still out, with Holgate still out, yes, you maybe could put Vinagre over there, but it would be shoehorning a left back who hasn't played this season into right back. And if Frank does that and he has a bad game, then we'll all be sitting here going, why did you do that? So I think I'll stick with Seamus Coleman. Left back, I am going to stick with Vitaly Mykolenko, as I said. I do think he was poor last week. I think he was absolutely terrified to try and take Anthony on for whatever reason, whether it be his pace, his skill, his quality, whether it just be because he had the bad day at the office, I'm not too sure. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because I think he's had a good season so far this season. I think he's played well. And yeah, he starts for me. And then obviously, as I mentioned, the 2 centre-half start. They are arguably the two players in the team that are guaranteed to play in this game tomorrow. So yeah, I'm going with that back 4. I am going to go with a midfield 3 again, and I am going to go unchanged. Now, this might come back and bite me on the arse. Well, I say bite me on the arse. I'm not the manager, so it doesn't matter ultimately. But I'm going to go with Garner, Onana and Iwobi. And the reason for that being is because, look, Garner was woeful last week. He was absolutely woeful. How many of those types of Garner Gay performance have we witnessed, not only since he's returned to Everton, but in his entire Everton career altogether, including his last spell? Not many, because he doesn't often put in a performance like that. And I think to drop him out of this game based on that performance would be a little bit harsh, considering the week before against Southampton, he was the best player on the pitch. But he was, there's an argument that he was the best player on the pitch, and there's an argument that his performance against Southampton won us the game because of how impactful he was. So I'm going to keep him in there. I know it's a little bit difficult on James Garner, and I understand this whole thing of, well, we were shite last week and the midfield wasn't very good, so now's the time to put James Garner in. I'm not necessarily all for just throwing James Garner in because Garner had a bad day at the office. I just think if Garner has a good day, it could be the difference between us getting something out of this game and not getting something out of this game. So Garner stays in there for me. Again, as I said, Onana stays in there for me. I don't think he had his best game last week, but I thought he was relatively good. And Iwobi absolutely keeps his place without doubt. Again, little bit unfortunate for James Garner, but if it's not going well, you can always bring James Garner on with half an hour to go to come on and change this game. And there's plenty of games coming up that James Garner will have opportunities to play in. And then the front 3, I'm going for Gray, Maupay and McNeil. Gray and McNeil, I think, are pretty much set, especially if we play in this formation, because we've got nobody else. Gordon's out suspended, and we've got nobody else in there. And as I said, McNeil was probably a little bit unfortunate to lose his place in the first place. Maupay or Calvert-Lewin. He may go with Calvert-Lewin because he's another week fitter, and because we're playing a team that ultimately we probably aren't going to get many opportunities against. So if we do get a ball into the box, or if we do get, a crossing opportunity, a corner or whatever, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is obviously the player that you would rather have in there over Neil Maupay. However, I just don't think Dom's at that stage yet of starting. I really, really don't. I think Frank Lampard will have maybe been a little bit more confident in his press conference about Dominic Calvert-Lewin when he was asked about him, if it was a cert that he was fit enough to start this game. I don't think that's the case, and therefore I don't particularly see him starting. But you never know. You never know. But I'm going to go with Neil Mopey because I think that's the more likely to happen. So there you go. That is my predicted starting 11. Again, let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're watching live, by the way, please hit that like button. It only takes a second if you're new to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Classic Lyric says Kuleveski's injured, means Richie starts. Kuleveski never starts against Brighton, nor Richarlison, says Ned. The Blues says, yes, Cam, let's hope they have an off day. Shane says, if Everton suffer heavy defeats to Spurs and Newcastle, can Everton stay positive? We'll have to stay positive. I don't think we'll suffer heavy defeats to either team. Again, we're under this illusion that Newcastle are this amazing team. They've won one more game than Everton this season. Newcastle are a good team and they're solid at home, and I'm not saying we're going to win the game comfortably, or I'm not even saying we won't lose, but we won't lose heavily. As I said, we're a very different team to the one that lost last week. The Blues says, Ned, they played 3-5-2 against Brighton, playing us at home. Wouldn't surprise me if they go back to 3-4-3, potentially. Would you consider Mopey and Calvert-Lewin in the future, says Lavivid? It depends. It all depends on the system, the way in which they're playing, if you can fit them both into the same team at the same time. I don't think we'll see it. I think we'll always see one or the other, but that's not me saying you can't do it, and that's not me saying that we won't do it. My opinion, I'm not sure we'll ever see that. But yeah, that is my predicted starting 11. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Listen, this one will be a difficult game. It will be a difficult game for sure. These are a very, very good side in very, very good form at the moment, and bounced back well after that defeat to Arsenal a couple of weeks ago with a win last time out against Brighton. Again, a hard victory in an away game. So it will be a task for Frank Lampard. The reality is we'll have to be much, much better than we were there last season, but we've got a much better defence. We've got a much better midfield. We're much more consistent. There's more leadership. There's more quality. There's more desire. There's more effort. Don't get me wrong. We lost that game last season because we had a distinct lack of quality in the team, but we also lost the game because the mentality was absolutely rotten, whereas that's not the case now. It will be tough to get something out of this one, but I'm confident we can get something out of this one if we approach the game in the right manner. But let's wait and see. Anyway, we are going to leave it there then. If you have enjoyed, please do leave a like. As I said, I'll be down at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium tomorrow. Instant match reaction and play ratings will probably be late. So look out for those at some point tomorrow night. But massive thank you for watching. If you watched this live, really appreciate getting involved in the live comments. If you have enjoyed it, please hit that like button. If you're watching a YouTube video, don't forget to like it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. That would mean a lot. And leave your thoughts in the comments down below. But until then, let's hope we can get something out of this one. Difficult game to bounce back in, but we can bounce back. Do you know why? Because we're fucking Everton, aren't we? Hey, fucking Everton, aren't we? Yeah? Come on. Up the toffees. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you later.